Sienna Tate hit the floor with a loud thud. Her heel twisted beneath her and her pride shattered faster than the champagne flute that had fallen next to her. "Oh my God, are you okay?" someone asked, deep voice cutting through the blaring music and the gasps from the surrounding dance floor. Her cheeks burned as she tried to sit up, brushing her curls out of her eyes. She hadn't even wanted to come to this gala in the first place. Her best friend begged her to be her +1 to the annual charity ball at the Langford Hotel. She said it'd be good for Sienna to get out of her tiny studio apartment and wear something that didn't come with a cashier's badge. But this, falling in front of 100 of New York's most polished socialites in a borrowed dress that didn't quite zip all the way. This was not the night she had in mind. "I'm fine," she muttered, trying to laugh it off, brushing her scraped palm against her leg. My dignity is in pieces, but otherwise a warm hand extended toward her. "Let me help." She looked up and blinked. The man standing over her wasn't just attractive, he was the kind of handsome that made you forget your name. Tall, broad shoulders in a sharp black tux, dark hair swept back like he'd just stepped out of a luxury cologne ad. His eyes were piercing, but not cold. There was concern there. Real concern. "Thanks," she said, taking his hand. It was strong, warm, and when he pulled her up, she stumbled into him. He didn't let her go. At first, she expected him to release her waist the second she found her balance, but his arm stayed there, steady around her. Protective. Like he didn't intend to let her fall again. "You okay now?" he asked, voice low but with a hint of amusement. That was a pretty dramatic entrance. Sienna laughed under her breath. "I specialize in those, mostly unintentional. I'm Quentin." He didn't offer a last name. "Sienna." He still hadn't moved his arm away. "Do you always fall this gracefully?" he asked. "Only when I'm trying to impress someone," she said, trying to hide the way her heart was pounding. His smile was quick and real, and it did something to her chest she didn't understand. "Well, consider me impressed. Are you always this smooth?" she shot back. "Only when I see someone fall and decide I'm not letting them go." The music slowed into something softer. Around them, couples paired off. Quentin didn't even ask, he just guided her gently into a dance. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You don't have to dance with me," she said. "I'm pretty sure I've hit my humiliation quota." "I want to," he murmured, his hand sliding to the small of her back. "Besides, you're the most interesting thing that's happened all night." Sienna didn't know how it happened, but suddenly the rest of the ballroom faded away. The chandeliers, the murmurs, the overpriced gowns, they all blurred into nothing. It was just him. And her. She didn't know who he was, but he moved like a man who was used to getting what he wanted. Still, there was no pressure in his touch. No arrogance in his voice, just that steady grip like he meant what he said. He wasn't letting her go. They danced through the song and another. She found herself laughing at something he said. Then he asked if she wanted to get some air. On the rooftop terrace, the city stretched out below them, glittering and endless. "So," she said, leaning against the railing. "Are you some kind of secret agent or just a very polite stranger who saves clumsy women from public embarrassment?" Quentin chuckled. "Neither." She tilted her head. "So what do you do?" "I run a company," he said simply. "What kind of company?" He hesitated. "Real estate, investments. A few other things." Vague, but not in a shady way, more like he was used to people asking for the wrong reasons. "Oh," she said, "must be nice." He studied her. "You don't know who I am, do you? Should I?" Instead of being offended, he smiled like that was the most refreshing thing he'd heard all night. "No," he said, "you shouldn't." She turned to face him. "Well, Quentin, who runs a company, thank you for catching me and dancing with me. And not laughing at me when I face planted in front of what I assume was half of Manhattan's elite." "You're welcome," he said. Then, softer, "You were the best part of this night." Her breath caught. "You don't even know me." "I know enough. You didn't pretend to be someone you're not. You weren't trying to network or impress anyone. You fell, and you got back up." He stepped closer. "And I meant what I said. I'm not letting you go." The air shifted. It wasn't just flirtation anymore, it was something else, something deeper. She didn't know this man, but the way he looked at her made her believe he saw her. Really saw her. Why me? She whispered. Because the second you fell, I knew I'd be the one catching you. She didn't kiss him, not yet, but something settled between them. A tether, a pull. He walked her back inside, offered to drive her home. She declined. He didn't push, but he did hand her a card before she left, just a name. Quentin Langston, and a number. She looked it up when she got home, and her jaw dropped, not just a billionaire, but one of the top 10 youngest self-made billionaires in America. Real estate, tech, hotels. Everything. She stared at the screen, stunned. She'd fallen on the dance floor, but somehow she'd landed in the arms of a billionaire who meant it when he said he wasn't letting go. Sienna stood outside the bakery, her apron dusted with flour, clutching a bag of almond croissants. The morning air was crisp, the sky just barely tinged with the soft gold of sunrise. She had been up since 4, as usual, preparing the daily batches before the city even yawned awake. But nothing about this morning felt normal, because in her coat pocket, nestled beside her phone and a packet of breath mints, was Quentin Langston's card. And all she could think about was how someone like him had looked at her like she mattered. Are you planning to stare at that bag until it gives you answers? Melanie leaned against the doorway, sipping her espresso, one eyebrow arched. Sienna blinked. What? You've been standing out here for 5 full minutes. Just holding your breakfast hostage. Sienna hesitated, then handed her the bag. Take them, I'm not hungry. Melanie stared at her like she'd just confessed to a capital crime. You're turning down croissants. Who even are you? Sienna leaned against the brick wall of the shop and pulled out the card. Do you know who Quentin Langston is? Melanie's coffee nearly slipped from her hand. Do I, Sienna? Are you kidding? He owns this entire block. Literally. The Langston Development Group bought it last year. He's practically royalty in this city. Why? Sienna didn't answer immediately. She just held out the card. Melanie snatched it, her eyes wide. He gave you this. He helped me up. We danced. I didn't know who he was. Wait, this was last night at the Langford Gala. Sienna nodded slowly. Melanie groaned and clutched her forehead. I told you to wear the black jumpsuit. But no, you had to go with the vintage tulle because it felt romantic. And then you just casually fall into the arms of Manhattan's most eligible billionaire. You're living in a rom-com and I'm the underpaid best friend. Sienna pulled the card back and tucked it into her coat. What do I even do? Call him? Pretend it never happened? He probably gives that card to everyone. Melanie narrowed her eyes. Did he look like he gives that card to just anyone? Sienna didn't answer because the truth was no. He hadn't. Later that afternoon, while restocking the pastry shelves, a man in a navy suit walked into the bakery. Not a customer. Not anyone Sienna recognized. He approached the counter with sharp precision and a calm smile. Miss Tate, she froze. Yes, he extended a small envelope. Mr. Langston asked me to deliver this personally. She took it with trembling fingers. The man nodded once, then left as quickly as he came, slipping into a sleek black SUV parked by the curb. Melanie practically tackled her. Open it. Now. Inside was a single sheet of thick cream paper embossed at the corners. Tonight, 7 o'clock, don't be late, I'll send a car. Cue no address, no explanation, just confidence and command tied up in 5 words. I can't go, Sienna said, heart thudding. You can't not go, Melanie countered, already dragging her toward the back room. We're closing early. I don't have anything to wear. Melanie opened the emergency closet and pulled out a garment bag. I've been waiting for this moment since college. Hours later, Sienna stood in front of a mirror, hair swept into a soft twist, her lips painted a shade deeper than usual, her nerves wrapped too tightly to breathe. The dress was midnight blue, structured but delicate and definitely not her usual style. But staring at herself, she barely recognized the woman in the reflection. The car arrived at 6:58. Black, sleek, and silent. A driver in a tailored suit opened the door for her without a word. The ride was quiet. Sienna tried not to fidget, but her hands wouldn't stay still. When the car stopped, she looked out the window and forgot how to speak. They were outside the Langston Tower. 50 floors of shimmering glass and steel rising above the city like it belonged to another world. Security buzzed her in without question, and a private elevator took her straight to the top. When the doors opened, she stepped into a penthouse unlike anything she'd ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the skyline, casting gold reflections across marble floors and velvet furniture. A grand piano stood in one corner, untouched but gleaming. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something darker, richer, and then he appeared. Quentin walked in from the far side of the room, wearing a charcoal suit with no tie, his shirt collar slightly open. His expression softened the moment he saw her. "You came." "I almost didn't. I would have found you anyway." She stepped further in, her heels silent on the polished floors. "This place is temporary," he said. "I rotate penthouses depending on the season. This one's for fall." She blinked. "You have seasonal penthouses." He shrugged like it was a normal sentence. "They all face different views. I like how the sunset hits this one." He gestured toward the dining area where a table for two had been set near the windows. Candles flickered beside crystal glasses and silver cutlery. "You didn't have to do all this," she said. "I didn't do it because I had to." As they sat, she tried not to gawk. Every dish was plated like art. The wine was older than she was. But what caught her attention more than any of it was the way Quentin watched her. Not like a man trying to impress, but like someone memorizing everything she did. "You still haven't told me why," she said after the first course. "Why what? Why me?" Quentin leaned back slightly, his jaw tightening just a little before he answered. "Because when I saw you fall, it wasn't just about helping someone up. It was the way you looked around, not embarrassed, but like you were used to picking yourself up alone. I don't want you to do that anymore." Silence settled between them, not heavy, more like a thread being tied. She looked out the window for a moment, then turned back to him. "You don't know what you're asking." "I think I do. You don't. My life isn't this." She gestured to the room around them. "I bake pastries. I live on the third floor of a walk-up with a broken heater and a view of a dumpster. I get excited when I can afford name brand shampoo." His voice was quiet. "I don't care about any of that. You say that now." He stood and walked to her side of the table. She didn't move as he reached for her hand. "I built all of this because I thought it would make me feel something." "It didn't, not until you." Her breath caught again, but not in the same way as before. "This wasn't butterflies, this was gravity, Quentin. I'm not asking you to change, I'm asking you to let me stay." She looked down at their joined hands. "Then don't let go," she whispered. "I won't." And he didn't. Sienna stepped carefully onto the helipad, the wind tugging at the hem of her silk blouse as the city blazed beneath them. She hadn't known where they were headed when Quentin had picked her up. All he'd said was, "I want to show you something real," and then guided her into a sleek black helicopter waiting on a private rooftop in Midtown. Now, as the blades slowed to a halt and the silence of altitude blanketed them, she turned to him. "You're not going to tell me why we're here, are you?" Quentin's eyes, darker in the waning light, met hers. "Not yet." The elevator inside the building opened directly into a glass-walled space, elegant, minimal and empty except for a single leather-bound folder resting on a steel table. Sienna looked around. "This isn't another penthouse, is it?" He shook his head. "Not mine. Not yet." She walked to the windows, drawn to the view. From here, the skyline felt closer, like it could be touched if she simply reached far enough. Quentin joined her, his voice quieter than usual. "I bought this floor 6 months ago. It was supposed to be an investment, an empty shell I'd flip like the others. But every time I tried to decide what it should be, nothing felt right." She turned toward him, brow furrowed. "So why bring me here?" He picked up the folder and placed it in front of her. Inside were blueprints, sketches, and pages of notes written in precise handwriting. "It's going to be a bakery," he said. She blinked. "What?" "I was going to open another high-end restaurant, something trendy. But after I met you, I couldn't stop thinking about what it would be like to build something that meant more than just profit. Something warm, something that smells like cinnamon at 6 in the morning." Her fingers hovered above the papers. "You're serious?" "I've already started the permits." I talked to an architect. I'm not asking you to run it. I'm not trying to buy your life. I just want to create something with you in mind, something that feels like you." She couldn't find her voice for a moment. When she did, it was barely audible. "Why would you do this?" Quentin looked at her, and there was no teasing in his face now. No lightness. Just a stark vulnerability she hadn't seen before. "Because I've spent years surrounded by everything money can buy, and none of it made me feel grounded. But then I watched you knead dough like it was an art form. I saw the way you light up when someone smiles after that first bite. You make things that matter to people. And you think a bakery 40 stories up is the way to capture that," he exhaled, almost laughing at himself. "Maybe it's ridiculous, but I wanted to try." Sienna closed the folder and stepped closer. "You don't even know if I'll still be around by the time it opens. I'm counting on the fact that you will be." She didn't respond, not because she didn't want to, but because in that moment, every part of her was trying to process the weight of what he'd just offered, not the bakery, but the intention behind it. Later, when they were back on the ground and walking through a quiet street tucked between rows of brownstones, she finally broke the silence. "I haven't told you much about me. I haven't asked for much. You should." He stopped walking. "Then tell me." "My father passed away 2 years ago. He left behind nothing but debt. I spent the first year trying to keep his business afloat. It didn't work. I work at the bakery now because it's the only thing that feels like home." Quentin's jaw clenched slightly. "You shouldn't have had to do that alone." "I didn't have a choice. My mother left when I was 12. It's just me." She expected him to offer sympathy. Instead, he said, "So you know how to survive when everything falls apart. Does that scare you?" "No, it makes me want to hold on even tighter." They continued walking in silence until they reached a small courtyard lit by fairy lights strung between trees. A jazz trio played softly in the corner, and a dozen tables were scattered beneath the branches. Quentin guided her to a reserved table at the edge, where the candlelight flickered against polished glass. A waiter arrived with 2 menus, but Quentin waved them away. "It's already taken care of." The meal was unlike anything she'd tasted before, delicate, layered, and strangely comforting. She didn't ask how he found the place. She didn't need to. Every detail had been chosen with care. After dinner, as the music slowed and the other tables began to empty, Quentin leaned forward. "There's something else I haven't told you," he said. Sienna raised an eyebrow. "Another rooftop bakery," he smiled, but there was a tension behind it. "I'm supposed to leave for London next week. For at least a month. There's a project I've been overseeing for over a year." She nodded slowly. "And you're telling me this now because I want you to come with me." Her breath caught. "Quentin, don't answer now. I'm not asking for anything more than time. We'd have our own space. You could bake, explore, do whatever you want. I just want you there." She stared at him, heart pounding against her ribs. "You barely know me." "I know enough to want more, and I know what it feels like when something real begins. I'm not going to walk away from that." She didn't answer, not yet. Because something inside her was shifting, cracking open beneath his words. The girl who had fallen on the dance floor was still there, but now she was standing, staring down the possibility of something terrifyingly beautiful. And for the first time in years, she didn't want to run. Sienna stepped into the arrivals lounge of London City Airport, her hands buried deep in the pockets of her coat as the chilled air curled around her. She hadn't expected to say yes when Quentin asked her to join him, but somehow the idea of staying behind had felt heavier than boarding a plane into the unknown. Quentin stood near the entrance, his posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp the moment they landed on her. He didn't say anything right away. He just reached for her hand like it belonged in his. They rode in silence through the city, the streets glowing with early evening lights. The car took them past old brick buildings and narrow lanes, until they pulled up in front of a townhouse with ivy curling up the side like nature itself had claimed it. The door opened to a quiet interior, warm wood floors, a crackling fireplace already lit, and tall windows that let the golden haze of dusk pour in. Sienna set her bag down carefully. "You didn't mention it was this beautiful." I didn't want to oversell it, Quentin said. I was hoping you'd be the one to bring it to life. She turned to him. You didn't bring me here to decorate a house. No. I brought you here because when something starts to matter, I don't believe in waiting around. She hadn't been ready to say it before, but now, with the fire casting shadows across his face and the city quiet around them, she whispered, Neither do I. Over the next few days, London unfolded in ways Sienna hadn't imagined. Quentin took her through quiet bookstores tucked beneath train arches and into hidden cafes where no one recognized him. He was different here, less guarded, still commanding but softer around the edges. One afternoon, she found him alone in the townhouse's study, seated at an antique desk with his sleeves rolled to his elbows. Papers were scattered in front of him, but he wasn't looking at them. He was staring out the window, lost in thought. You're not working, she said as she leaned against the doorframe. Quentin looked over, a slow breath leaving him. I was thinking about you. That's hardly efficient. I'm not trying to be efficient. She crossed the room, her gaze flicking to the documents on the desk. What's all this? Contracts. There's a property in Edinburgh I've been trying to let go of for over a year. I think I'm finally ready. Why now? Because I realized I've been holding on to things that don't serve me anymore. Properties, people. Even the idea that I need to always be building the next thing. Sienna sat on the edge of the desk. You're still building something, just in a different way. He reached for her hand. With you, it doesn't have to be about more. It can just be about better. That night, they attended a private dinner hosted in a converted clock tower above the Thames. As Sienna stepped out of the car, dressed in a coal-hued gown Quentin had sent to the townhouse without a word, she paused beneath the towering stone arch. It's surreal, she said quietly, all of this, being here with you. He adjusted the silk scarf around her shoulders. It's not surreal to me, it's the first time any of this has made sense. The dinner sparkled around them. People in sharp suits and elegant dresses moved through the space, but Sienna's world narrowed to Quentin's voice beside her, the way he leaned close when he spoke, and the way his hand never drifted far from hers. At one point, a man approached their table and leaned in with a familiarity that made her stomach twist. Langston, didn't expect to see you with company. Quentin's tone didn't shift. It's a private evening. The man turned to Sienna, his smile thin. And who might this be? Sienna opened her mouth, but Quentin spoke first. The woman who changed everything. Later, as they walked along the riverbank, Sienna stopped beneath a bridge lit with soft amber lights. Do people always look at you like that? She asked. Like what? Like you're untouchable, like they want something from you, Quentin hesitated. I used to think it was the price of success, but now I think it's because they never saw the parts of me I didn't show. And I do, he touched her cheek. You see the parts I didn't know were still there. Sienna didn't speak. She didn't need to. She wrapped her arms around his waist, and he held her like he'd been waiting for that moment since the night she crashed onto his world. The next morning, she woke up to the sound of rain against the windows and the scent of something rich and sweet drifting from the kitchen. She padded downstairs to find Quentin standing at the stove, a whisk in one hand and flour smudged across his wrist. You're baking, she said, blinking. I watched you do it enough times, figured I'd try not to burn the house down. She leaned against the counter. That's bold of you. I like bold. He handed her a plate with a scone that looked slightly lopsided but smelled perfect. She took a bite, then narrowed her eyes. You used clotted cream instead of butter in the dough. He looked almost smug. I might have read your notes. She shook her head, laughing. You're impossible. I'm learning. Later that evening, as twilight settled across the city, Quentin brought her to the rooftop of the townhouse. A small table had been set with flickering lanterns, and the skyline stretched endlessly around them. He poured her a glass of wine but didn't sit. Instead, he dropped to one knee. Sienna froze. I know we haven't done this the traditional way, but nothing about us has been traditional. You fell into my arms, and somewhere between that moment and this one, I stopped seeing a future that didn't include you. He pulled out a ring. The setting was simple, elegant, and entirely her. I don't want a life of penthouses and projects without you in it. I don't care if we build bakeries or just burn toast together in the mornings. I just want every version of forever that includes you." Sienna stared at him, heart pounding against her ribs like it might crack through bone. The wind tugged at her hair, the city quiet below them, the moment impossibly still. She didn't hesitate. "Yes." The word broke from her lips like a promise. Quentin stood, slid the ring onto her finger, and kissed her with a certainty that left no room for doubt. She had fallen messy, unexpected, completely unprepared. But she had landed somewhere no one expected, in love with a man who had everything and still chose her. 2 months later, Sienna stood in the doorway of her new bakery, staring at the brass letters being mounted above the glass entrance. Flour and Fire. Her name wasn't on the sign, but it didn't need to be. The whole place was hers, built from the ground up, from a space Quentin had once considered a shell. Now it was filled with warmth and scent and purpose. Quentin stood beside her, his hand resting lightly at the small of her back. "They're ahead of schedule," he said. "I told you James was good." She glanced at the construction crew packing up and gave a small nod. "It feels real now." He leaned in closer, his voice low. "It only just begins." The last few weeks had been a blur of planning, tasting, and decisions. The London townhouse remained theirs for now, but the bakery had brought them back to New York, back to the city where she'd once fallen into his arms and never really gotten up. Inside, the countertops gleamed. The ovens were already fired up. The menu boards waited for final touches. She walked in slowly, brushing her fingertips along the edge of the center table where customers would soon gather for coffee and raspberry tarts. "I don't know how to explain it," she said. "This place, it feels like a heartbeat." Quentin followed her gaze. "That's because it's alive." "You gave it breath." She turned to him. "You did more than you let me see. The permits, the contractors, the silent partnerships. You let me think I was leading, but you were always the foundation." "I wanted you to feel ownership," he said. "Not like I handed you something, but like we built it together." "I did feel that. I still do." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, not the kind that carried diamonds, but something older, worn at the edges. "I've been holding on to this. It belonged to my mother." Sienna's breath caught. She hadn't heard him speak of his family before, not in detail. Something softened in his eyes as he opened the box to reveal a delicate gold locket, shaped like a teardrop and etched with fine filigree. "She gave it to me the year before she passed," he said. "Said it was for the woman who would make me feel like I'd found home." Sienna didn't move. "You've never shown this to anyone. Never even opened it until a week ago." He placed it in her hand. Inside the locket was a tiny pressed marigold, faded but intact. "She loved marigolds," he said. "Said they were the only flower that didn't pretend to be more delicate than they were." Sienna closed the locket gently. "She sounds like someone I would have liked. She would have adored you." He didn't ask her to wear it. He didn't need to. She lifted it to her neck and fastened the thin chain, the cool gold settling against her skin. Later that evening, they hosted a soft opening for close friends and family. Melanie arrived first, rolling her eyes at the black tie dress code Quentin had insisted on. "Only you two would make a bakery opening feel like the Met Gala," she said, kissing Sienna on the cheek before disappearing toward the champagne. The space filled quickly journalists, industry friends, artists, and old clients of Quentin's who had never seen him this relaxed. He didn't hover over her. He let her lead, always a step behind, his presence steady but never overpowering. As the evening wound down, Sienna stood near the back counter, watching an older couple share a slice of ginger cake. She felt a quiet pride swell in her chest. "I think they like it," Quentin said, arriving beside her with 2 glasses of sparkling cider. "I think I might like it too." He took a sip before setting his glass down. "You've changed me." She tilted her head. "You were already this man, you just needed space to breathe. Then you gave me air." She reached for his hand. "No more penthouses that face sunsets," he laughed. "Only if they come with fresh croissants and you in my shirt." She leaned in until their foreheads touched. "You're not letting me go, are you?" "Never." Months passed. The bakery opened to the public, drawing lines down the street by the third week. Sienna hired 3 staff members: a quiet pastry chef who specialized in laminated doughs, a college student who loved frosting cupcakes, and a retired woman named Gloria who insisted on playing vinyl jazz records in the mornings. Quentin's world shifted. Meetings moved to a smaller office closer to the bakery. His assistants adjusted. His board adapted. He didn't compromise his ambition, but Sienna watched him turn it inward toward things that mattered. One morning, she woke to the sound of his voice in the kitchen. She padded out, still barefoot, and found him reading a recipe aloud to Gloria, who was already elbow-deep in scone dough. "Are you trying to replace me?" she asked, arms crossed with a smile. "Trying to keep up," he said, brushing flour from his cuff. They didn't rush into a wedding. There was no need. They lived as if they'd already made every vow, each day folded into the next with quiet certainty. On a spring afternoon, nearly a year after their first meeting, Quentin brought her back to the dance hall at the Langford Hotel. The ballroom stood empty, sunlight spilling through the high windows. "Why are we here?" she asked. He walked to the center of the floor, then turned with one hand outstretched. "Because this is where you fell into my life. I wanted to rewrite the moment properly." She took his hand. "You mean without the part where I hit the ground?" "Exactly." He pulled her into a slow waltz, the music drifting from a hidden speaker. They moved in perfect rhythm, the silence between steps filled with more than words could hold. When the song ended, he kissed her long and sure, the kind of kiss that didn't ask for anything but gave everything. And she knew, without doubt, that she had not just fallen into something with Quentin Langston. She had built something alongside him with flour and fire, with love and resilience. Together, they had created a life neither had dared to imagine, and they weren't letting go.